terms of that position. Havertz cannot be, with all due respect, and I like Havertz a lot, and I've defended him a lot against, some ridiculous ridicule. He, for me, is not the centre forward that takes Arsenal to the title.
Too much of a burden on his shoulders, man.
I think that Arsenal can win a title with Havertz as their centre forward, and we saw that last season where we were one win away from that being a reality, and you could pinpoint a load of points throughout the season where had something different,
West Ham
we
at
would
home
have won the league. So I think that shows that you can win one with him, but the chances of it are much lower if it's him over, say, somebody else. And I'm not saying that Sesko comes in and does that. I think Sesko is the type of signing you do to become your own version of a world-class centre forward. Salah wasn't Salah when he joined Liverpool. The Salah we know now and have known. It's about trajectory. It's about signing somebody that's on the up. So I don't want a project. So I never wanted to entertain the Rashford situation.
I'm not on that at all. Thank the Lord we didn't do that, man.
Exactly. Arsenal need players that are on the rise, not players they need to revive. That's the way in which Arsenal should be.
Damaged players, essentially.
Exactly.
Which is a shame. So where are you at with Nico Williams? Because I'm just trying to go through the ones that are like Zubamendi, Sesko, the ones that are always linked with us, where it's fair to say there must be some interest.
Yeah, I think that Williams is a really interesting profile of player because last season was arguably the best, most high-profile left winger of his age bracket on the planet, and was producing some fantastic performances and took that into a European Championships and scored in a European final to help Spain win against a very good England side. So you'll then expect him either to make that move, or you're expecting him to build upon that and have another great season. Neither of those two things have happened. He didn't get the move, and his numbers this season have been, in terms of output, very mediocre in a good athletic side that continue to be in contention for Champions League qualification and are still in the Europa League and are hosting the Europa League final in Bilbao at the end of the season as well. So there was no chance really of him leaving in January because he would have wanted to stay at least for that. Imagine leaving your hometown club when they're hosting the Europa League final.
You could never return, man.
Absolutely not. So that was never ever a situation that was on the cards. I think that when you're looking at him as a signing, financially, it could be a very good deal to do because the release clause is, I think, just around over £50 million.
In that region, yeah.
For Arsenal, which for a player of his age and profile, you tend to see Mudryk level money, Anthony level money being paid for players that
it's the going rate now
are no guarantees. So it is a release clause that would have to be paid, or a buyout clause that would have to be paid up front, which, as you all Spanish buyout clauses are. Of course, Arsenal could look similarly to what we expect with Zubamendi to maybe pay more and negotiate better terms. And Arteta really does like Williams. He's a big fan of Nico Williams, and they may indeed return for him. But the priority will be centre forward and central defensive midfield for the summer as priority targets. Because when you've got a player like Ethan Nwaneri who has come through, you've already got Trossard, you've already got Martinelli at the club. That isn't necessarily going to be as high of a priority as the centre forward and CDM position when you're losing Partey.
True.
If Trossard leaves, and he could leave because we know there was a bid from Saudi Arabia at the end of last summer. That could happen again this summer. We know that Al Nassr are going to be looking for left wingers after they fail.
Life-changing money as well, to be fair to Trossard.
I wouldn't be surprised if that was a move that happened in the summer, Trossard to Saudi. It wouldn't surprise me at all. And then Arsenal would then have more of a reason to move maybe more aggressively for a player like Williams. But there isn't any guarantees that he is the answer. We know that Antoine Semenyo is a player that they've looked at. We know that Mateus Cunha is a player that they've looked at. So they also could be options for Arsenal in those wider positions in the summer as well. So yeah, we're going to have to wait and see what happens on the wing.
You're right, man. But based on what you're saying with the players, and I guess it's the going rate, it's going to be expensive, man. Like, what? Sesko's going to be around 70. If we were to get Isaac, you're talking the hundreds. Zubamendi, it might be a little bit over 50 million, as you said, if depending on how we go around that. Nico Williams, the same, and obviously his wages. Obviously, if we were to name Arsenal's strongest 11, give or take, I think we're not going to do that, but everybody here could probably agree on the nucleus. You might differ with the fullbacks, maybe who's on the left-hand side at this moment in time. But I think we'd all agree who's up front, which at this moment in time is Kai Havertz, and obviously in midfield. If we assumed we got either Isaac or Sesko or whatever, and we've got Zubamendi, Rice, and Odegaard, where does that place Kai Havertz for you? Because yeah, on one hand, you know, Tom knows, we all know you need a squad, etc. But then Kai wouldn't be in the strongest 11, and some would say on them wages you can't have a squad player on that. But what's your thinking around that?
The wage thing always is something that gets
crazy.
He was on a big wage at Chelsea. He was a market opportunity. He was considered one of the best prospects, you know, in world football. He went to Chelsea, scored in the Champions League final, and Arteta saw it as, and the club saw it as a market opportunity to land, you know, a player that they felt that maybe they could turn back. And he has been better at Arsenal than he was at 100%. Chelsea, but he's not been the Havertz that maybe many expected that he was going to become when he was at Bayer Leverkusen. That's for sure. True. And it hasn't solved the centre forward. I think he solves a lot of problems for Arsenal. I think he solves a lot of depth issues for Arsenal. I think you add a centre forward.
Army knife, really.
Exactly. You add like a Sesko to this, and if Sesko can't play a game, you've got Havertz there. You know he's on for a 20-goal season. You know this. He
can be part of the squad without a doubt.
And he's offered, you know, options in the left eight. He's offered options if Odegaard's missing to play second striker, perhaps behind a Sesko or, you know, an Isak or whatever. So, yeah, he's definitely an important part of this team. He's just not, for me, as we've already mentioned, the guy that guarantees Arsenal a title.
I think you're bang on the money. I've got to ask you about the last two transfer windows, apologies, with a focus on January. Do you think, one, we've dropped the ball a bit with what we've not done in the last two windows? And where do you look at the January market? Because admittedly, I thought surely with Gabriel Jesus and Saka's injuries, I know it's difficult to do business, but surely. And then you look at the Watkins bid. So where are you at with Jan, man?
Yeah. So, yeah, January was a failure, like a categoric horrendous failure. When your manager's coming out and saying, yeah, for sure, we're going to try sign a striker. We are short. We need something. Jesus' injury has changed it. And it did change it because Arsenal were looking more at wide players, I think, in January prior to Jesus getting injured. Because I think they probably thought with the options that are going to be available in terms of like big investments, the wide area was more of an area to kind of look at. But then when Jesus got injured, that all changed.
Panic alarms.
Now, I don't think that there was the starting centre forward for Arsenal in the January window. I think Watkins, obviously, as we have come to learn, was a Villa idea more than an Arsenal idea. And that I think Villa recognised that they've got a young player here in John Duran who could be their striker for the foreseeable future. Arsenal are in need of a centre forward. Hey, we could get a big money fee out of Arsenal if indeed they're open to that discussion.
For someone turning 30 as well.
Arsenal are open to that conversation because he's a player that Mikel Arteta likes, but they were only ever going to be willing to do that deal on their terms and on an amount of money that they felt was, you know, acceptable for a 29-year-old. And for the record, I think I'm right in saying this, and someone said this to me the other day, and I've not seen anyone come back to me to say it's wrong. The bid that Arsenal offered, which I'm told was 40 million plus add-ons, is a record for a Premier League club offering for a 29-year-old fellow Premier League player. I don't know if it's just strikers, but a 29-year-old, Arsenal offered what would have been a record for that specific age category of player. So let's not kind of sully the offer that Arsenal wanted to. I personally was uncomfortable even with that, you know, being offered, because I don't think that Watkins is the answer to Arsenal's problems. I think he certainly would have come in and had an impact and helped us, but I don't think the needle is pushed as much as it needs to be.
Surely there's implications on bringing Sesko and them players in as well in the summer.
There is one. The bid that, at the amount of money that Villa wanted for him, or even because people think, 60 million, that gets the job done. That wasn't the case. 60 million, to my knowledge, was what started the conversation with Villa. You know, that's kind of the figure they were willing to have conversations around before you.
I said they wanted more.
This
is trying to take us to the cleaners, man. They really are the villains.